Hello. Welcome to the Giving Voice podcast. My name is Matt Austin, and I'm going to be your host for the next year of the Giving Voice podcast. I'm taking over from Natalie and Izzy, who previously ran the podcast for the last year, and I'll be doing the same going forward. A bit about me: I'm a second-year speech and language master's student at UCL, part of the Giving Voice Society, obviously. And I'm looking forward to bringing you lots of interesting conversations with lots of interesting guests. Speaking of which, we have our guest today, Mr. Richard Cave, who's here to talk about some interesting AAC, some high-tech AAC, I believe. And we might be able to use that in our practice and use it going forward. So, Richard, hello. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello, and thank you. Thank you for asking me. And I have to say, this is a really professional setup.
Well, wait until I finish the podcast before we start calling it professional. I might end up having some absolute goofs on the way. But thank you for coming. And I think also listeners of the podcast might recognize you because you are, in fact, our first repeat offender on the Giving Voice podcast. You were in the very first Giving Voice podcast. Yeah, episode 1.
Episode 1. Episode 1 was in the basement of Chandler House. And I was... the guys that interviewed me were very professional and it was really good, but I was kind of just worried. I was kind of worried the whole time. But here, there's so much light, so much space, and I just feel super relaxed. So really happy to talk about this stuff.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll just sort of jump straight into it. To begin with, if you could maybe give the listeners a bit of a brief introduction to yourself, like who you are, what you do, what led you into speech therapy and related practices, that sort of thing.
Yeah, so I'm a speech and language therapist. I qualified in 2008 at the City, and prior to that I had a long career working in IT. I worked for Dell Computers for 10 years and the other companies related to IT. Everyone's got a story about why they choose to become a speech and language therapist, and for me, it started quite early, because when I was 11 or 12, I kind of noticed, I got very self-aware that I stammer, and until then I hadn't thought about it, but then I thought about it a lot, and I genuinely thought that I was the only person in the world that stammered. I genuinely thought that, and I went to my dad to talk to him about it, and I never talked to him about him. But I was desperate, and I said, I don't know what I'm going to do because I can't talk and I'm 11. And bless him, he sent me to speech therapy, group therapy, actually just on the Blackfriars Road. And that changed my life. And I met and worked with speech therapists and also people of my own age. And I ended up feeling a lot better about life and feeling more confident. I still stammer, and it wasn't really about a cure. It was more about how I think about what I want to do and to manage. And it worked really well. And I had speech therapy all the way through, off and on into my 20s. And I just had this career in IT. I've always been interested in technology. I helped open offices in Slovakia and Madrid for Dell, and that kind of generalist technology. And but it got to a very stereotypical age, unfortunately. I seem to follow the stereotypes, but I got to around my mid-30s, around 40, and I just wondered, what am I doing? What am I doing with my life? Because I really enjoy it, but I really enjoyed working for Dell and others, but it just felt like there was something else, and I knew there was. And I talked to my wife, Annette, a lot about it, and I just ended up making the decision to start again. And as you and the listeners know, doing masters in speech and language therapy is anything but easy. and I had the same. And I did the postgrad, and it killed me. It was just so tough.
It's very intense, isn't it? 'Cause was it similar for you as it is for us, where it's a 2-year degree? So they cram a lot into those 2 years, don't they?
They cram a huge amount, and those 2 years were very intense. I mean, the placements were just stunningly hard.
Yeah, definitely.
Having said that, I kind of came in determined to work with people who stammer, and I occasionally do, but I came out of it starting a career in working with people with neurological injury, and I worked in kind of specialist rehabilitation for adults. Yeah.
And did you enjoy that work in specialist rehabilitation? Was that like out the gate really good?
Very much so, and it's the power, I think, of placements. That one placement I just like. It was at where was it? King's College Hospital down South London. That just changed everything, because I just felt like I had something to give here, and it was completely new to me, working with people with stroke and acquired neurological conditions, and that just really opened my eyes to kind of what maybe I could give, and it was in addition to anything around disfluency, and so I built a career around that area.
Oh, that's really amazing stuff, and I love the that story and how like you've gone from receiving speech therapy as a child to then coming back later and completely transitioning your career into that field and helping people with impairments. Is a really, really nice nice progression. Also, it takes a lot of courage to switch career like midway like that. It must have been very scary at the time.
Yeah, it was.
Definitely,
it was.
Yeah.
And the first thing was I talked at length with my wife, and it was challenged me on it. It's like, are you sure about this? And just talking about it. And the hardest thing I ever did was actually went to tell my boss at Dell, because I'd known him for a decade.
Wow. Yeah.
And I walked into his office and I said, "Oh, Pat, I'm leaving." And he said, Where are you going? Are you going to Hewlett Packard? Where are you going? I said, "No, I'm going to train to be a speech and language therapist." And there was the longest silence, I tell you. The longest silence, because it was just like, I honestly thought I was in real trouble, because he likes to talk. Anyway, he said, "Well, how can we help you?"
Oh, that's really nice.
And it was just amazing, because Dell, I'm sure to this day, do not have a single speech and language therapist in their team. But he kept me on in a part-time role at Dell while I was training for the 2 years, and gave me almost nothing to do.
What a legend. Very nice. Yeah.
It's just amazing, and to this day, I mean, I just keep buying Dells.
Customer for life. They've done well there.
Yeah.
But another thing that's quite good is that you've seemingly have combined your sort of past experience with IT with your current practice of speech therapy to work on these apps that we're sort of here to talk today about. So previously, when I booked you for the podcast, we were going to talk about Project Relate, which is the app that I think you were initially contacted about, which was a high-tech AAC app for people with dysarthric speech. But you told me today when we met that that's been sort of updated into a new project now. What was the name of the project again? Sorry?
Project Euphonia.
Which is very confusingly named after the previous iteration of Project Relate.
Exactly. It just confuses me the whole time, and I'm supposed to know about it. So.
But could you tell us a bit more about Project Euphonia and how you came to be involved in it, and what the project is?
Yeah. So all this area is about using technology to help people who have different or impaired speech, or non-standard speech, as the technology companies call it, to be better understood in life. And the way that this technology works is that you can train a speech recognition model that's customized for how people talk, say people with cerebral palsy, stroke, people with motor neuron disease, how they talk. And it better recognizes how they talk, and it captions it live on the phone screen. And so it's live captioning. And so when we talk about AAC, assistive and augmentative communication, this is completely augmentative. It's providing an additional signal to the listener while the person still talks. And the additional signal is the captioning on the phone. So we're not stopping people talking at all, like some ASE does when people are hard to understand. The ASE only works if people talk.
Amazing, yeah.
So that's the idea, and I ended up working on this because I got offered a consultancy position at Google, where they were looking for speech therapists to kind of work on this project, but also to bring people with impaired speech in to actually do a kind of a co-design thing. And I ended up staying there for 4 years before that project ended. In the midst of all that, I worked. Professor Stephen Block was my supervisor working on a master's. I did a master's of research with him, and that was on voice cloning. But that went straight into a PhD while I was at Google on the evidence base on kind of how these types of speech recognition technologies actually work in function. And that was a 5-year part-time PhD while I was at Google and beyond. And the idea was to kind of, there are all these claims about how these speech recognition tools work and all the measures that are associated with them for the live captioning. But nobody has studied how they work in practice. So I did a PhD exactly on that, using conversational analysis and other tools to really video what happens in an interaction when something that is live captioning impaired speech. How the speaker feels, what the speaker does, how the listener reacts, how the interaction works. So that's what I did, and unfortunately, kind of Project Relate, pretty much, although it's running now, it hasn't really been invested in for a while, and it has limitations because it only recognises speech that's in English, and at that American English. So it's kind of it's helpful. It's helpful. It kind of set the precedent for what can be done. But it also was very apparent in the PhD as to what it can't do and how accurate it was and how it wasn't for particular kind of speech types. And really that was what the PhD was. It was talking about the technology, but in the lived experience, and actually highlighting where it didn't work as much as where it did. And I think, this is a broader theme for the work I'm doing at the moment, that, the world is covered in conversations and applications around AI, and lots of people are saying how great it is, and I think as a profession, as speech language therapists, we need to consider more than most about in practical application, where these things do work and where they don't work. It's equally important so that for our clients who we represent, when we think about AI and all these applications and who are central to our practice, everybody understands where these tools work, how they work, and where they don't work. Because currently, just generally, in my experience with AI, there's an awful lot of stuff out there, even for our work in practice, like scribes, all that kind of stuff, where everyone's talking about how great it is, but nobody is talking about where it's not working, and we have to change that.
So would one of the places it's not be working be that application to different languages and different users, I suppose, other than, typically English-speaking people?
Yes. So there are I found in the PhD that there are significant benefits which could be had, but only if people themselves understood, not just the speaker, but also the listener, understood how it worked. And also it didn't replace at all the practices that, that dictate a good conversation. So, stuff like our listening skills and just how we deal with breakdown and repair. All those human skills all matter. So it's not about technology at all. Even at Google, this was the big argument that I used to have all the time. It's not about technology. We're talking about communication, and communication is bigger than an Apple phone. So, but to people in Google who are just wonderful, and they're super bright, and they're at least half my age, and they're totally brilliant people. This is difficult because if we're measuring communication, then it's not something that could be measured on the app. It's something that is far broader than that. And so, with this new project, we got funding from Google. We're expanding the languages, so we're going beyond American English. And the last year or so, we've been collecting data, collecting recordings of people with impaired speech across 10 African languages, 4 in Ghana, 2 in Kenya, 2 in Uganda, 2 in Rwanda. And the idea is to, rather than starting with the more obvious languages, start with the languages in which are almost never going to be kind of looked at by big tech, to kind of start at the other end. And just to prove that we can do it with everybody, we're making it all open source. That means that not only the technology is open source, we're open sourcing the skills as well. So we have lots of technical people on the team. We go to the universities in Ghana and Kenya and Rwanda and Uganda, and we teach the computer science students there, speech therapists there, and we share with them everything we've done, because the idea is that we are doing 10 languages in Africa, but in Ghana alone there are 80. So who's going to do the others? It can't be us. It needs to be much better done by local people, speech therapists locally, technologists locally, who understand the community and understand how this might work. So it's a big project, and once we prove, in which we will, that this approach works, then the tool set in which we're creating can be used by anybody around the world. So my question is, kind of, who's going to deal with Spanish in Argentina or in Paraguay, or who's going to do Icelandic? And there are so many languages. I was in India last week, and a beautiful country with 1.3 billion people, and hundreds, probably thousands of languages. When are we going to start helping people with impaired speech to keep talking and be understood in India? So it's just the beginning of the big project.
Yeah, but would that be the benefit of making it all open source, and that you can just give all the code to some speech therapists in Iceland and say, off you go?
Yes.
Please train this for your respective language, which is really nice.
So we're open sourcing the code, and we're open sourcing the data sets as well. Because with AI, everything's about data. So, and the reason why people with impaired speech are not understood by, say, Google Assistant or by Alexa or whatever is purely down to data. That how they talk, there's not enough data to include them. And that's a problem, because, everything, there's so much that is controlled or kind of where voice is used in, and it's getting to the point where, AI agents, voice agents, are using in myriad ways, including stuff like kind of screening for job interviews, and kind of just practical stuff. But the problem is, for people with non-standard speech, all of that is excluded, and that means all the opportunity beyond those tools are excluded. And I kind of, this term about digital divide, it's a real thing, and AI is bringing lots of benefits, but by the same time, it's bringing a digital divide that's ever broadening, because AI-driven voice tools are getting everywhere.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think you can't scroll through Instagram nowadays without seeing some AI voice reading out a caption or something, which is very, very strange. To go back a little bit to Project Euphonia, so obviously prior to this conversation, most of my research was around Project Relate. Does Project Euphonia have the same sort of features? So it transcribes dysarthric speech into a text form, and then plays it out loud again. Is it similar? So I remember one thing I saw with Project Relate was it took a large amount of training in order to train to someone's voice. Is it a similar type of scenario with Project Euphonia? Because I think for the listeners, I think it took about 500 phrases minimum in order for the app to work, for it to recognise this dysarthric speech. Is that similar to Euphonium?
Yeah, the concept is similar. So it's really what we're trying to do is rebuild Project Relate in a kind of open source way, but make it work the way it was supposed to. But the concept is the same.
Okay.
That for people with impaired speech, that they can train a model that works on their phone, that can caption their speech on a low-powered Android phone. But there are a whole bunch of things in which we're working on now. One is that beyond English, lots of other languages, so you can speak in the language that you prefer, rather than the language that the technology dictates. We're working on making sure it works on Android and Apple, because that's the number one question that we had with Project Relate is, can I get it on Apple? And because it was a Google project, that was not necessarily the highest priority. So we're doing that, but it's still the same. That in terms that there may well be phrases that people need to record to personalize it, but for people with kind of milder impairments, as measured by the device, then the accuracy may be enough for not much training. So
amazing.
Yeah, but it's free, and it will always be free, and we're just working on ways to make it available globally.
Amazing, that's perfect. So in terms of obviously the listeners for this will mostly be speech therapists.
Yeah.
In terms of clinical application, would you recommend it for those with just any sort of dysarthric speech? Because I would wonder about also its application for people with progressive diseases and things like that. Would they have to retrain the app multiple times?
Yeah, these are really great questions, and I would say from my experience, it would not be much benefit for people who have, say, mild to moderate dysarthria, who are generally understood without needing support.
Yeah.
Equally, it may not be useful for people with severe or profound. So there is a kind of a midpoint where the tool can be optimally effective without being kind of wrong all the time, and without the listener understanding everything all the time direct from the speaker. So it's in that midpoint, and there are whole, from the PhD, there's lots of other considerations that came out of it, like, will it work equally well in a bar?
Oh, with all the background noise.
Yeah. Rather than in a quiet environment, and will it work equally well with all the words I use? So for us, words semantically, words have different values, and words like people, places, and things, with names of people we love, where we live. Those words are quite hard for speech recognition tools because there's not a lot of data on kind of how that word is to caption it. At the same time, Stephen Block in his papers has written about this, that at the same time those words are quite hard to repair if somebody doesn't understand, because it's not easy. It's harder to describe or use other words for a proper noun. So there's lots of considerations, and all I'd say is, would it be useful for a client? Would it be useful for a speech therapist to discuss with a client? The answer I'd say is have a chat with the client, explain, and it's just like although it's technology, what we're really looking after is communication. So it can't be just technology by itself. It's technology plus
everything else.
Yeah.
So I suppose one of the takeaways I'd want for this podcast for the listeners would be to understand a bit about Project Euphonia and know when to use it in practice or know when to recommend it. So that's a really useful answer I think you've given.
Well, we just got on kind of quite a sizable grant to actually kind of build it out. So if anybody listening would like to be part of the testing or something like that, we are building it over the next few months. And
maybe I could drop your email in the description for the podcast.
Yes.
And they could shoot a message if they're interested in helping out.
Yeah,
definitely. I did have another question regarding the usage of the app. So, in a case where maybe with maybe motor neuron disease or something, where someone might not have full use of their limbs but can still orate with a dysarthric voice, do you reckon would it be compatible with a switch or something?
There is no reason why it can't, because that is dependent on the hardware itself. So there are plenty of tablets out there, whatever, that actually may be switch accessible or an eye gaze access accessible. There isn't a reason. It wasn't built not to. So
Yeah, okay. I was just wondering because we were talking about possible, clients that could use this.
Yes.
So I was wondering, if in a case where someone did have the ability to speak or orate but couldn't maybe operate a phone, if it could be used in that use case.
Yes, but, I think it's hard to generalize, because once people have access needs and speech needs, then kind of specialist ASC services hopefully will be involved.
So in terms of the app, so it recognizes dysarthric speech and can then orate that to someone in a clearer speech that the layperson might be able to understand. Previously, I think Project Relate did that in a sort of generic AI voice, to my understanding. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Is that still the case with Project Euphonia?
Well, so there are kind of two outputs, three really. The first is speech in, just dysarthric speech, and then text out. So just people read the screen. The second is, and will be, speech in, speech out. So with Project Relate, one of the big challenges we had that if somebody with impaired speech spoke, there was only one synthetic voice that was available, and that was a female American voice. It changed a bit later on, but it was still highly limited, and people often give a lot of feedback on that, and really positive. With Project Euphonia, with the new one, we are planning to link with voice banks, so voice clones, and I'm doing quite a lot of work at the moment with companies like 11 Labs, where they have highly accurate voice clones, voice banks, and the idea is to integrate kind of speech in for the person with dysarthria and speech out. And the speech out could be, depending on their preference, it could be based on a recording of how they were prior to their speech change. And so it could be kind of speech in, speech out, speech in, dysarthric speech in, and unimpaired speech out, their voice, but unimpaired. Or they could choose whatever voice they like. And I've had, kind of working in voice cloning, voice banking voice cloning, I'm actually taking each term as exactly the same for now. That voice banking, a synthetic version of a person's natural voice, is a highly personal thing. And how people want to be represented by the voices, everyone has an opinion on. So it could be that when you voice bank a person, then they may prefer more about how they sound now rather than how they used to sound, or they would rather someone else do it, or they would rather have a voice that's no relation to them at all.
Because that was one thing I was thinking about. If you don't have a voice speaking for you, in a sense, that's going to massively impact your sense of identity. So I suppose where voice banking comes in might alleviate that slightly. I imagine it's probably still quite different. Even having a version of your voice coming out of a phone might not be quite the same, but
Yes.
it would still help.
I think, for the speech therapists in the world, that what you say is completely right. That some of the voice banking, and I'll have to play mine, is highly accurate now. I mean,
Amazing.
super accurate, to the point that, well, I'll play mine and then I could talk about it. But for us as speech therapists, we know that, a voice banker, a voice is really just no more, no less than a part of AAC. And so it's still going to be different, when you're typing or eye gazing, even with a voice that sounds like you, is going to be probably an awful lot slower than people are used to. So this is one of the big challenges with working voice banking and helping people voice bank, because the marketing of many of the voice banking companies, that it's very easy to confuse creating synthetic voice banking, with talking banking, which is what people really want, and actually their voice talking the way that they always did, at the speed that they always did. And it doesn't really matter how accurate that voice is, it's unlikely to increase the speed. So, but what I have found is, in the last year, AI comes again, that with this AI voice banking technology, it's so accurate that people who are using it for real, say people with MND, some have come back and said that actually, because the voice is so accurate, the people around them identify very strongly with that voice, and they are interacting with them more.
Interesting.
And that's something I'm doing some research on at the moment. But that was the first time I'd ever heard that actually the technology, the accuracy of the voice coming out of the technology seems to be supporting sense of identity, or even recognition of identity for that person.
It's having a real functional impact on people's lives, which is really, really, really nice to hear.
Yeah.
Because you said how far voice banking has come along. I haven't really kept up with it, if I'm honest. But because one thing I think is, in my experience, I've seen it always struggle with is things like prosody, or indicating pitch or questions or things like that, or having a sense of personality. Is that something that AI can account for nowadays, or?
It's getting closer.
Really?
It's where the real kind of golden ticket is recognizing context and recognizing who you're talking to, and just how things are. And right now, lots of people are working on that to adjust the voice bank recognition, who they're talking to, and actually, but that is still a work in progress. And certainly the voice banking technology has moved forward so far in the last year. I mean, I can't tell you how much it has improved, but there are some kind of basic fundamentals that we are very aware of as speech therapists that still need to be worked on. So, with voice banking, it's still the case that if I typed and said a message and spoke to you, or a policeman, to a 3-year-old, it would still sound the same. So there is a lot to work on still, but it's come on.
Well, as you say, as long as it's being functional and helping people build relationships around them, that's already a massive step forward.
Yeah.
Which is really nice to hear. So Project Euphonia would hopefully work with voice banking in theory. So
yes.
Because that sort of leads into one of the other questions I wanted to ask was, how can this project or this app work with other applications on someone's phone, like maybe something that might help them like write an essay or write a book, or like maybe navigate their computer or something. I don't know, I'm kind of pulling things out of the air at the moment, but I suppose that sort of intersectionality might be the right word, but how it works with other things. Other technical things.
It's a really important point, and part of the reason why we're making it open source, that we can't do all of that because we don't know all of the intersections, and other people are much better at that. But by making this data set of impaired speech open source in the languages that people use, then those intersections can be looked at. In fact, we ran a hackathon at the University of Ghana in April, May, and the winning team built a model that for people with cerebral palsy or impaired speech in Akan, which is one of the main languages in Ghana, that they could interact directly with WhatsApp.
Amazing.
And so that was just like a really great worked example. How if we make stuff open source and we train the students and mentor and then support them, then good things happen. And,
yeah.
So that wasn't there before, and certainly not in Akan. Yeah.
No, that's amazing. So I know you've prepared somewhat of a demo, I think, on your laptop. Is that right?
Yeah,
it might be quite nice to have a look at that if we could, to sort of show the listeners exactly what Project Euphonia can do.
Yeah, I thought rather than Project Euphonia, because I thought I would just play you.
Whatever you've got, yeah.
Yeah, because Project Euphonia is kind of being built at the moment.
Oh, I see.
So it's quite hard to demo, but that is a work in progress. So I'm very, very serious about co-design, and that includes speech therapists and speech therapy students. That if you want to get involved, then please do.
Yeah, and let's say check the description on the Spotify podcast for Richard's details if you do want to get involved.
Yeah. So this is I'm going to play you my voice bank.
Okay.
And I created this voice bank from reading a book for 10 minutes. It's any book. So you don't need literacy skills or anything to create a voice bank. You can just talk. You can do anything. You can read anything if you want to. You can talk. You can do anything, just as long as it's your voice and there's no other background noise. And anyway, and then once you create the voice bank, you can type anything you like, whether you recorded it or not. It's just any words, any non-words, anything.
Nice. Well, I'd love to hear it. Yeah, let's see what we've got.
See, after the big build up,
I know
it'll probably go wrong.
Fingers crossed, it should work.
Okay, here we go.
That is so good to talk with you for the Giving Voice podcast today. Here is my synthetic voice bank. What do you think of it?
I think it's amazing. And for the listeners, that was entirely off of Richard's laptop. That wasn't him speaking in the microphone. That was all in the box, I think, would be the term.
And the thing is, we've talked about language and how limited a lot of the technology is around language. But thanks to AI and this technology is available now in 73 different languages, including for the first time some languages in Africa, which had never happened before, and Asia as well. In fact, no less than 12 Indian languages. And I kind of stop me when I sound like a salesman, but they've made it free as well. And so that means that for, people that we work with in Africa or India, by making this technology free and work and kind of available in the language that people use there, then we have an interesting opportunity here to actually kind of move beyond the normal barriers where voice banking, voice cloning has been very expensive, to enabling it to work on people's low-powered Android phones in rural Kenya. So.
Amazing. And I think another thing worth mentioning is that was off, you said 10 minutes of training, reading a voice, which isn't a massive amount, I would say. Like, I don't know, 10 minutes of someone's time to get a reasonably accurate interpretation of their voice is quite a comparatively low bar.
And actually, although I did it for 10 minutes because that's the best quality, you can create a voice clone in with 30 seconds of speech or less. And there's a really good story that came out a couple of months ago. Sarah Ezekiel, who lives with motor neuron disease here in North London, and she had no recordings of her speech. She's lost her speech for a long time, except for one video, and it had just a few seconds of her talking, I think, to her friend or family while changing her baby's nappy. And that was the only video she had. It was just a few seconds of her old speech. And that was taken by Smartbox, actually, and just extended a bit by duplicating, got to around 30 seconds, and created this voice clone and this voice bank. And it's just stunning, because I didn't really know. I mean, I've known Sarah Zekel for a long time, but never heard her kind of natural speech. I didn't really know that she was a North Londoner, and yet she sounded very London.
Amazing, yeah.
And she's kind of used that. She kind of used that and gone on, and she wrote a play, and the voice features in the play, and it's just like, it feels like using this type of technology. If it helps people feel more themselves and sound like themselves, sound like how they want to be, then what next?
Yeah, I mean, that's quite powerful stuff, I think. That's amazing to hear.
And the other thing is that with this technology is that if you voice bank in one language, say 30 seconds or 10 minutes, like I've done, then you can speak in any of the other 72 languages.
Oh, through typing, translating it.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Translate it, and it should come out as you're speaking in a different language, but in your natural voice, just with your tone. So, if you like, I mean, I can't speak English language, but my voice bank can. So, I don't know. We could pick Hindi.
Let's go for it. Yeah, this is. I mean, the potential for me to prank my friends into thinking that I can speak many, many languages is very exciting to me personally. But I think it could be really useful if you're traveling to a different country, for instance.
Yeah. So I'm going to play the first thing in English, which will be the "Hello, Matt," and then we'll do it in Hindi, which will be the same thing.
Nice.
Let's just see what. So in English.
Hello, Matt. Is so good to talk with you for the Giving Voice podcast today. Here is my synthetic voice bank. What do you think of it?
And now we're going to hear the same thing again in Hindi.
In Hindi.
आज गिविंग वॉइस पॉडकास्ट पर आपसे बात करके बहुत अच्छा लगा. ये रहा मेरा सिंथेटिक वॉइस बैंक. आपको कैसा लगा?
Wow, I mean, I've no way of verifying that was accurate, but it was definitely in a different language, which was really cool to hear.
Yeah. Now, you did tell me that you were good at French.
I said I could. I took GCSE French. Good is a very different.
Yeah, I had to. I wasn't allowed to take my French initially, and then I got so upset about it. I actually took it as later on, just to prove.
Just out of spite, yeah.
Just out of spite. So, okay, ready to go.
Bonjour Matt, c'est un plaisir de discuter avec toi aujourd'hui pour le podcast Giving Voice. Voici ma banque de voix synthétique. Qu'en penses-tu?
Very nice. And to the knowledge of my C I got in GCSE French, I think that was accurate.
Yeah. So where that benefits functionally is that, one, it's available in 73 languages. So for the first time, people in the community I work with here in London who would prefer to speak Urdu or Hindi or Tamil or Icelandic, they ask, can I voice bank? And for the first time ever, I can say yes. Yes.
Amazing, yeah.
But also for people who are blessed to speak multiple languages, that it's less effort for them because they just do the recording, their 10-minute recording in one language, and then they can type in any other language which it supports. And, it just helps for stuff like, like, for example, Annette, my wife, her first language is Cantonese. And when she speaks to her parents in Hong Kong, you hear there's this kind of, it's not just Cantonese, it's not just English, it's kind of a mix of the two, and it's whatever works for that exact time. And so here we have a tool that could emulate that, it's not just limited to one language, you can split. And the other thing is that, mentioned that I have a stammer, that in my more disfluent moments, I've also recorded and created a voice bank on kind of Richard the Disfluent. And actually, Richard the Disfluent voice bank is also disfluent, is also slightly disfluent. And that feels right to me, because when we create these synthetic voices, one of the dead giveaways for that it's synthetic is it's perfect. And nothing's perfect in speech, of course. And so having these imperfections makes it more real.
Definitely. And also it speaks to that sense of identity we sort of touched on earlier, I think. If I spoke perfectly all the time, I'd sound a bit like a robot. It wouldn't be...
It's exactly that. And it and it raises the question, do I want my imperfections wiped out by the voice bank? Is that... Actually, I would rather have the choice to actually decide whether that's the case.
I agree.
Just last week, working with a lady with aphasia, and she has significant word finding difficulty. She knows what she wants to say. She's a retired professor at a university in the States, and she is an advocate, and she likes to present and talk about stroke. But the big problem for her is that even if she's trying to read the words on the page and knows what they are, that because of the aphasia, the expressive aphasia, it was just hard for her to kind of have any sense of fluency, and there are lots of pauses and everything. And so, in this case, she wanted a voice bank of her voice as is now. She didn't want it from back then. She wanted how she sounds now, but more kind of more flowing, so that if she had difficulty, then she could present her words in her voice as is now, but with fewer gaps. And so in the voice banking, that feels like a very new use case.
Yeah,
but
definitely.
for people with word finding difficulties, doesn't instantly jump out. The voice bank might help. But if we have a couple of seconds, I'll need to set up. I've got two recordings, one of which kind of how things sound, how she sounds, and the other one is how her voice bank sounds.
Okay.
All right, so I'll just play you this. This is the natural voice.
My stroke was 14 years ago. I have since grieved what I lost, old me. The respect, something that's the civilization of our work.
So that's
her natural voice, yes. as is.
Yeah, that's quite. So this is the voice bank that she uses for her presentations.
I loaded about 30 minutes of a talk I gave last fall into software by 11 Labs, and it created this voice clone. Now I can load in any script I write, and Debitar can present for me in a voice that sounds, well, kind of like me. Why is this so helpful? With aphasia, I practiced so many hours to give a talk. Using Debitar, I can give more talk and hopefully make more impact. I can also use the practice time I save to do more things that make me happy. That helps me to stay healthy, both emotionally and physically. And Debitar also lets me talk about some things that are really hard for me. A few months ago, Steve and I were preparing for a podcast about grief. I was practicing for it over and over, as I have to do, and I was getting depressed, reliving some of the most difficult parts of my recovery journey. Steve did the podcast without me, but used Debitar so that my voice, not just my story, could help the audience understand how managing through grief is an important part of stroke recovery.
Amazing. That was, yeah, I see how what you were saying, it maintains her voice as it was, but just makes it more fluent and maybe get through her points a little quicker than she would.
It just gives her an extra option to be herself and get her message across. And I think that's what she said there was very powerful, that she was working so hard to get the message out that sometimes it just kind of gets her down because it's so difficult. And she mentioned something called debitar, but that's how she calls her voice bank. So, and it's just like it's just another option. And what I really liked about her was she wanted her voice as is now, not kind of prior to the stroke.
I think it's a really nice idea to celebrate the imperfections rather than aim for something that's maybe not accurate. Yeah. I think that's an amazing point to end on, maybe, because that was a really, really powerful speech from what was her name again? Sorry.
From Deborah.
From Deborah, yeah. Really lovely way to end with a speech from Deborah. So the final segment that I did want to introduce to the podcast was, it doesn't really have a name yet. If anyone comes up with a name that I think would be good, do write in, comment on Spotify, or send or on YouTube, or wherever you take your podcasts. But I thought it'd be nice to hear about something that you're enjoying at the moment from our guests. So that thing can be something related to SLT, like a paper or a book, or because we're not SLTs all the time, it can just be something you're enjoying. Some music, a good sandwich you ate recently, whatever you're into. So, Richard, what have you been enjoying recently? What would you like to recommend?
I have to say, I just want to say, I do not regret one day the decision that was made all those years ago to become a speech therapist. I think we're all doing incredible work, and I'm just really proud to kind of be associated with UCL. I think you guys are doing an amazing job, and so and I'm sure that you'll end up being brilliant speech therapists. I love music, and I came across this guy called AriAtHome, who's on YouTube, and what he does is he walks around the streets of New York with a keyboard, and he asks people if they want to rap or sing, and he writes the music spontaneously, and they sing whatever that comes into their heads. And I find this I've been watching it for hours, because it just, people who you wouldn't blink an eye, that they're just walking past, and some of them that stop are utterly brilliant. And it just feels like there's all this talent in the world that, given an opportunity, they will shine, which kind of plays very strongly into the work in which I'm doing at the moment. So this is a short piece of, a stranger came up to Ari, and Ari wrote the piano piece there and then. This is on a New York street, and he sung whatever came into his head, and this is what happened.
Dark, just trying to find the sun. Trying to find a way. I run. Wanna run away, but I really wanna run away. I'm searching for the sun, but I'm trying to find a halo.
I guess I'm moving every angle. Yeah, I think they let me out the stable. Yeah, I think they really wanna hear this. I get lost and I've been drinking on this spirit, and we up on the sidewalk, I'm making weird shit. Yeah, wrecking on my brain looking for lyrics. Yeah, waiting for the time in the sun. I know how that I've been out here, and you know I'm getting numb. Yeah, and I'll be searching for the halo. Run around downtown, midtown, every angle. Yeah. They signed me to some label. I know there's a story in my mind.
Amazing stuff. Thank you so much for that, Richard. That was really cool. And I might link to that. That's a YouTube video, right?
Yeah.
So I can maybe pop that in a link in the description.
They just created it. I was just like, oh my gosh.
Fantastic. And on that wonderful note, I think we'll call it a day. Thank you very much for coming in. Thank you for speaking.
Thank you very, very much.
No worries. I've been Matt Austin.
I've been Richard Kane.
And you've been listening to the Giving Voice podcast.